America should secure its border.
That's racist!
There are only two genders.
That's racist!
Hello guys, welcome back to the Mad Box. Today we're going to be talking about how I became conservative. Now for me, the journey starts back in 2016 when Trump became president. During this time, I was a freshman in college. And if you asked me if I cared about politics, I would have said no. If you asked me if I was left-wing or right-wing, I would have said chicken wings, because I really did not care. All I knew was that I was supposed to hate Donald Trump and love Hillary Clinton. And I actually did vote for her. But after the election, when Trump won, everyone at my school went crazy. It was virtually impossible to have a conversation with anyone on campus. And initially, I really began to get annoyed with being told, this is the right way to think, this is the wrong way to think. It really got under my skin. And that's the thing, people would get offended by everything. It was considered racist to say that a country should protect its own border or even put itself first. And if you even agreed with Trump's wall or pointed out the fact that other countries like Israel have a wall, you were called the Nazi. So as you can imagine, the hysteria that existed around Trump or even the intolerance against opposing views really did surprise me. Now, I've always been a very inquisitive person. Even as a child, I'd ask a ton of questions.
Mom, is Santa real? So he ain't afraid of getting shot coming to Chicago?
I've always been one to ask questions, so this idea that I was supposed to shut up and accept everything without question seemed so ridiculous to me and something I absolutely could not do. In elementary school, we're all told that America is the strongest country in the world, the richest country in the world. So ever since I was a child, I always thought there was this huge fortress surrounding the country. So one day in class, my professor was talking about how evil it is to build a wall. And I kind of raised up my hand and said, well, you know, I always thought we had one. And everyone kind of paused and looked at me crazy. And they were like, no, we don't have a wall and you have to be against it. So I was in this awkward position of having to be against something I already thought we had. And of course, they hated the idea that I, even as a child, sort of rationalized the importance of having some sort of border protection. Probably one of the most bizarre moments that I had was in my history class when we were talking about capital punishment. And out of nowhere, my professor stood up and looked around the class and he said, you know, it would be so sad if any of my students support the death penalty. And that really took me by surprise because you're a professor. You're supposed to be encouraging us to think differently and debate amongst ourselves. You're supposed to be objective and unbiased. But for him to say it's so sad if any of us support the death penalty, it just made me realize that not only the students, but also the professors were very close-minded and militant in what they believed. It became very obvious that the list of things we were allowed to say grew shorter and shorter, while the list of things we were not allowed to say grew longer and longer. And obviously in that kind of environment, you become very annoyed, very frustrated, and very exhausted with the things people are expecting of you. I remember going to one of our Black student leadership events where all the Black kids on campus met up to talk about random things. And as you guessed, this time, people were talking about Trump and how evil and racist he was. And the microphone was sort of going around the room. And when the microphone finally came to me, I brought up the fact that during Trump's State of the Union address, he gave a scholarship to a poor Black girl being raised by a single mother. And everyone in the room looked at me all crazy, looked at me all sideways and said,
No, he wants to take us back to 1952. He's a part of the KKK. He's a Klansman.
They just spewed out all of these ridiculous things. And I just sort of sat there very puzzled at the fact that they could just dismiss something he did to benefit a black person, and they still held on to this narrative that Orange Man is bad and Orange Man is evil, and no matter what Orange Man does, he can never be forgiven. It was just a very annoying thing to have to witness. So college definitely was an informative period in my life. The Trump hatred was so great and kids were so sensitive and ridiculous that I basically went from being somewhat liberal to jumping way to the right side of the political spectrum. And that happened because people at my university were so extreme. And as they say, when things are ridiculous, you run in the opposite direction. And for me, that direction was the conservative one. Alright guys, that is it for this video. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you were once a liberal who became conservative, or maybe you were like me, didn't really give a cahoot about politics, but you saw how crazy people were and you kind of ran to the conservative side of the aisle. Whatever it is, let me know down in the comments. And as always, see you next time.